A true crime podcast.
It got me upset because this is someone's kid, and someone knows she's gone.
That takes a different approach.
It was shocking for something like this to happen in our little town.
Focusing on the communities affected by life-shattering crimes.
It made news throughout the entire region that these two people had been shot while they slept in such a safe community.
To give a new perspective on the devastation crimes can cause.
It was shocking for something like this to happen in our little town.
Featuring cases from quiet towns to bustling cities and interviewing the people closest to the case.
My first thought was that it's an unusual location for us to have a homicide.
Listen to the true crime podcast City Confidential and step beyond the yellow tape to learn just how far a crime can reach.
There are certain cases in the history of Boston that I think sort of define the city. I think this is one of them.
New episodes of the City Confidential podcast are available every Thursday, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 385 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. You know, you and I are taping very early in the week for us. I also taped with Morph early because, you know, being down there in Florida, he's unfortunately in the path of this, what could be a very nasty Hurricane Milton.
Yeah, so good thing he's getting away for a little bit.
Yeah, so we taped early so that he and his family could leave and get to safety. And we want to put out good wishes to everyone. And it's not just in Florida. You know, the path of those hurricanes can change, and they affect people all the way up through the country.
Oh, yeah, they do. They're devastating.
So hope everybody stays safe. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Mike Obaugh.
Hey, Mike O.
Anna Maple.
There's Anna.
Alyssa.
Well, look at you, Alyssa.
Christina Barlow.
Thanks, Christina.
Victoria Gentry.
Oh, awesome, Victoria.
Stephanie Wells.
Hey, Stephanie.
Maria Cruz.
Thank you, Maria.
Samuel Orenberg.
Sam O.
Danielle Barthel.
Hey, Danielle.
Amanda Harmon Wilson.
What's going on, Amanda?
And last but not least, Sarah Jane Blandford.
Thanks, Sarah Jane.
Yeah, we appreciate the new support. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Faith Sadowski.
There is Faith.
So we appreciate the long-term support as well. Gibbs, we have a new episode out right now on True Crime All the Time, where we're talking about Kathleen White, a registered nurse. Her husband, Kenneth, died in 2011, and it was thought that he died of a heart attack. He did have some heart issues, but the authorities started to suspect his wife, Kathleen. And we'll get into all the details of why.
You just can't trust
anyone
anymore. Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
We're talking about the disappearance of Suzy Lamplugh. We're actually headed to England.
Oh, good. I could teach my British accent.
Okay. In July 1986, 25-year-old real estate agent Suzy Lamplugh disappeared in the middle of her workday. She left her office to show a property to a client identified in her notebook as Mr. Kipper. Suzy has never been found, and Mr. Kipper has not been formally identified. But the police do have a main suspect in this case, and we're going to get into all the details surrounding all of it. Suzy Lamplugh was born on May 3rd, 1961, in Cheltenham, England. She grew up in East Sheen, a suburb in southwest London. Suzy was one of 4 children. Her parents were Paul and Diana Lamplugh. Suzy was described as conscientious, outgoing, and happy, and someone who lived life to the fullest. All great things to hear right, about someone. But I want to focus in on the living life to the fullest, because I just wonder how many people actually do that. And how possible is it?
Well, I think a lot of people want to do it.
And some people might think they're doing it. But what does the fullest mean? Well,
I think that's going to be, everybody's going to have a different definition of that.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, we all have constraints, right? Most of us have to work. You have to get money to live life to the fullest. And some people would say, well, working is not living life to the fullest.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think if I was living my life to the fullest, I'd have a backpack on, and I've been traveling the world to this day, living in different countries and doing different things and helping people out. And
how would you fund that?
Well, that's the problem with living your life to the fullest.
That's kind of what I was getting at. But I know what the phrase means. I just kind of want to break it down a little bit. Suzy worked as a beautician on the QE2 cruise liner, but she left that job to become a real estate agent. She worked for Sturgis & Sons in West London. Now, have you ever been on the QE2?
I have not been on the QE2.
I have not either, but
the QE1, yes.
Have you? How'd you like 1?
It was okay.
If you did, you love 2 even more.
Exactly. I'm assuming the QE is for Queen Elizabeth.
Yes. That part I do know. I've never actually been across the pond, but would love to go. My wife and I have been talking about going to London.
You need to go.
Yeah, that seems like London and Australia. Two very different places, but those are the 2 places that we kind of have on our bucket list.
And I think you should take me. I'll carry your bags on and off the plane and hand them to a...
How about you win like a pig in the poke type contest and take us?
I don't even know what a pig in the poke is.
From National Lampoon's European Vacation.
I knew it sounded familiar.
How about you win some kind of trip and take us? At the time of her disappearance, Suzy was living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Putney, which she purchased in 1985. Suzy left her office at 12:40 p.m. on July 28, 1986. She wrote an entry in her notebook for an afternoon appointment with a Mr. Kipper at a property in Fulham, West London. She took her house and car keys with her, as well as her money purse, which contained £15 in credit cards. She left her handbag at the office. About 10 minutes after she left the office, Suzy was seen waiting outside a property at 37 Sherolds Road. A man showed up to the house at 1 p.m. According to the Suzy Lamplugh Trust, Suzy and the man were seen walking away from the house. The BBC reported that witnesses saw her arguing with a man outside the property.
All right, so they got her confirmed at the property, talking to somebody. Is it Mr. Kipper? We don't know. Most likely, but wonder what they were arguing about.
I don't know. Strange, right? I've met with, a fair number of real estate agents over the years. I've viewed houses before. Can't remember ever really getting into an argument with one. And I certainly probably wouldn't do it out in front of the house. So you do have to wonder, what was it about? And did it have something to do with her disappearance? Did this guy have something to do with her disappearance? Because this was the last time Suzy was seen alive. She failed to attend another appointment that afternoon, and her manager reported her missing around 6:45 p.m. Suzy's manager called her mother, Diana, and asked, per the Suzy Lamplugh Trust, "Do you have any idea where your daughter might be, Mrs. Lamplugh? We wondered whether she could have called into home for lunch. I don't want to worry you, but Susanna left to show a house to a client just before lunch, and she has not returned. We just wanted to check anywhere we could."
Well, at least they're being diligent about that.
Yeah, I mean, they could have said, well, she just went home after the showing. She'll show up to work tomorrow. But they didn't do that, right? They didn't just make an assumption. Now, on the other end of this phone call, who is a mom who's going to be very worried.
Yeah, it's one of those calls you never want to get.
No, because it was said that Suzy was someone who always followed the rules. She wasn't the type of person who would have just skipped an appointment with a client. So I think her mom knew right away that something was seriously wrong. And then just after 10 p.m., the police found Suzy's white Ford Fiesta abandoned by a river on Stevenage Road in Fulham, about a mile from her office. The driver's side door was unlocked, the handbrake was off, and her money purse was found in the glove box. The keys were missing. There were no signs of a struggle and no unaccounted for fingerprints.
So it sounds a little strange.
Well, it sounds very strange to me in the context of, her being unaccounted for, right? Being missing. The police find her car unlocked. Where is Suzy?
Right. Why did she leave her money purse behind?
And why has she not contacted anyone? Investigators tracked the home address given by Mr. Kipper and found no one by that name living there. Based on witness descriptions, the suspect was a man between 25 and 30 years old, around 5'8", with swept back hair and a dark suit.
A lot of the articles that I read on this case, they referred to this Mr. Kipper as a very good-looking and handsome man.
With the swept back hair.
Yes.
But it's sounding like this Mr. Kipper is a made-up name, right? A fictitious name given by a man when he set up the appointment to see this property. The police believe Suzy was abducted, most likely by Mr. Kipper. And I don't think they're not going out on a limb there. If this is the last person that she's thought to have been with, people saw her with a man outside the home, they were arguing. It seems like a pretty solid theory.
Yeah.
On July 31st, Suzy's parents appeared on BBC's Breakfast Time and TVAM's Good Morning Britain, where her mother, Diana, said, "I feel she is shut up somewhere, that she's being held against her will. I feel that because she hasn't contacted us. She is a very strong, very fit lady, so she would be able to cope with most situations." And I think, okay, the very strong, very fit, I'm sure she was. And a lot of people can cope with most situations. But if you're taken by a surprise, especially by someone who is maybe stronger than you, that's going to be tough for anyone to fight through.
Yes, especially if they found a way to drug you.
Yeah, we have no idea how she may have been overpowered, if that's what happened. But, this notion that families have, if their loved one was okay, they would have contacted them. And I feel that way in most of the cases that we do. If they were alive and well and not being held against their will, they would reach out to someone.
Right.
Most likely family. So that's a worrisome part of it. The fact that she has not made contact. On August 4th, Diana told BBC's London Plus that she was beginning to worry her daughter was dead, saying, "I can face up to the fact that she has died, but I cannot face up to what has happened between. That's too much." And that's a very, candid and interesting statement. If my daughter is dead, if that is the end result, I can face it. It's going to be tough. But what she's saying is she can't face what happened between the time she was last seen and the time she died. Because I think in her mind, she's thinking those details would be rough. Very, very rough.
And I don't think any parent would want to hear them.
Or know exactly what happened. Paul Lamplugh added that Suzy had a fear of enclosed spaces and she would be terrified to be confined. And I have that same fear. I think I've talked about it before. I have claustrophobia, And it's not just limited to confined spaces, although that is part of it. Crowds, I don't know if you actually call that claustrophobia, but feeling trapped is a big issue for me. But I have trouble in like MRI machines or where you have to go through the little tunnel and they tell you can't move. Anytime where I feel like I'm trapped.
Restricted.
That's very tough for me. I actually watched a movie a couple of weeks ago and Ryan Reynolds was in it, but I had never heard of this movie and I had never seen it. The entire movie takes place with him inside of a wooden coffin that is buried underground.
Really?
Yeah. I don't even remember the name of it, but it is a strange movie.
Sounds like it.
Where he spends the entire movie trying to get out of, but he has a cell phone.
Oh.
So he's making calls to people.
Okay.
I would just give up.
Was the movie worth watching?
I don't know if it was. I do like Ryan Reynolds, but hey. Unfortunately, leads quickly ran out in Suzy's case. And this is something we see very, very often in unsolved cases. Eventually, the leads are just going to stop coming in. You might get a flurry in the beginning, right? You have sightings, you have this and that. But if the missing person is not out and about,
they're going to dry up.
There's not going to be any sightings to report. In December 1986, Diana and Paul established the Suzy Lamplugh Trust with the goal of supporting victims of stalking and protecting women from violence. In later years, the charity lobbied for private hire vehicle licensing in London, campaigned for the Protection from Harassment Act of 1997, and set up the National Stalking Helpline. The trust also runs a training program called Staying Safe with Other People that protects adults with learning disabilities.
So it sounds like they've done a lot of good throughout the years.
A ton. I mean, these are some great programs. And how many times have we seen where, the families of someone who has either gone missing or has been killed has kind of, I don't want to say dedicated their life, but made it their mission to help other people in the name of their loved one. And it sounds like that's what Diana and Paul did in establishing this trust in Suzy's name. In October 1987, the Metropolitan Police scaled down the investigation. Eventually, DNA testing would be conducted on 800 unidentified bodies to determine if any of them were Suzy.
That's a lot.
It does seem like a lot. Now, we are talking about London. There's a lot of people in London. And my assumption, as with any very large city, is you are going to have, throughout the years, a large number of unidentified bodies. That's just going to happen. Suzy was legally declared dead in 1993 or 1994, with most sources we saw listing the later date. In December 1999, it was reported that detectives were evaluating information supplied to Suzy's mother 5 weeks earlier via a phone call and a letter. The tip indicated that Suzy's remains were buried at the Norton Barracks near the city of Worcester. The former military base was shut down in the 60s, and housing developments were built on the land. The location was also connected to claims made a decade earlier by the former girlfriend of convicted killer John Cannan, a key suspect in Suzy's disappearance. So Diana, Suzy's mother, gets a phone call and a letter about where her daughter's remains are buried.
It's going to get your attention.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're going to want to know, is this true or is this just a hoax? But doesn't it seem like, maybe there's a little credibility here when you find out that this location was also connected to claims made by this convicted killer, John Cannan?
Well, I think you have to take it more seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to call it corroboration, but I agree with you. I think you do have to take it very seriously. John Cannan's history of sexual violence started when he was just 14 years old. The police suspect Cannan was involved in many unsolved crimes. He was possibly connected to 20 sexual assaults and rapes in the West Midlands from the 1970s to 1980. These crimes were committed by an unidentified man called the house for sale rapist, who targeted female real estate agents.
Sounds like a nightmare.
Well, it's a very large number. But I think we're also getting a glimpse into why police view, this guy, John Cannan, as potentially being Mr. Kipper. I mean, here's a guy who was known to have targeted female real estate agents. So much so that he was given the moniker the house for sale rapist. The assaults ended in 1980, which was the year Cannan married. The proximity of the assaults to his address at that time led the police to think he was the rapist. He was convicted of a murder that occurred after Suzy disappeared, as well as other violent crimes. On October 7th, 1986, Cannan raped a woman after abducting her at knife point in Reading. Exactly 1 year later, he attempted to abduct a woman at gunpoint in Bristol. The following day, October 8th, 1987, he kidnapped and murdered 29-year-old Shirley Banks in Bristol. Shirley was a factory manager from Clifton. She had only been married for a month when she was murdered. Shirley disappeared from a multi-story parking lot in the early evening hours of October 8th. She was shopping in Debenham's department store. A sales receipt placed her in the store at 7:26 p.m. Shirley was supposed to meet her husband Richard for a drink, but she failed to show up. He searched for her at a local bar and then returned home to wait. The next day, he called Shirley's workplace and was told she had called in sick due to an upset stomach.
That's going to be strange, right?
Very strange. So she's calling work to say, hey, I'm not coming in, but she doesn't come home and she's not calling her husband. Number one, Richard's got to be pretty worried.
Sure.
But I think number two, if you're the police, you also got to be looking pretty hard at Richard because things don't seem to be adding up here.
Yeah, she's not home with him, but she's calling in work saying she's sick. You got to figure out what the heck is going on here.
But Richard was quickly ruled out as a potential suspect. The police wondered if Shirley's disappearance was connected to the attempted kidnapping the day before. Shirley's in-laws received strange phone calls after she went missing. The Western Daily Press described the calls as macabre, but they didn't report the full details. Shirley carried a list of phone numbers in her purse, which is most likely how the caller got the numbers. So, the newspaper used the word macabre, which is kind of a strange word. You're just wondering what exactly was being said in these phone calls.
Yeah, for them to use that word.
Because that makes me think, you're talking about death or body parts or, something to that nature. I'm not thinking that these are heavy breathing calls or sexual in nature or something like that. Much more graphic or murderous.
Yeah.
I'll use that word.
Murderous.
On October 29th, 1987, John Cannan was arrested while trying to rob a shop in a town called Royal Leamington Spa. Inside his vehicle, the police found Shirley Banks' vehicle tax sticker in his glove box. He denied any involvement in her disappearance and claimed he'd never even seen her before.
Well, what else is he going to say?
Yeah, deny. But how do you explain having this woman's vehicle tax sticker in your glove box if you've never seen her before and didn't have any involvement in her disappearance?
I think it's going to be a hard sell to the police.
And tough to even come up with something. What would even be your lie at that point? Detectives hoped Shirley was being held captive somewhere and would be found alive. When they searched Cannan's apartment, investigators found Shirley's thumbprint on a document. When the police showed it to him, he said it had never left his apartment, which to police proved that Shirley was there at some point. Now, that doesn't sound very smart to come out and say that document never left my apartment. Make up a story. You got it from somewhere so that at least there's the possibility that someone's fingerprint could have gotten on there in some way.
But instead, he just kind of boxed himself in with that.
Very much so. The day after Cannan's arrest, the media speculated he could be linked to the Shirley Banks case. The police appealed for anyone who had seen or interacted with Cannan to come forward with information. A woman named Amelia Hart reported a disturbing encounter from October 9th, 1987. Around 2:15 p.m., she and her husband were driving along Bridge Road near the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol when they saw smoke in Lee Woods. They slowed down to investigate and heard a man shouting, "Come on, come on." He sounded annoyed and urgent, almost as if he were in a fight. They couldn't see anyone, but they heard heavy blows, as if someone were hitting a punching bag. Then Amelia saw the dark figure of a man in the trees. He appeared to be holding something in one hand and punching it with the other. They heard someone shouting in protest, and the man shouted, "I told you what I would do," and continued punching and kicking the victim, who at this point was screaming. Amelia Hart shouted at the man, asking him what he was doing. He then came up to the car with a crazed look on his face and shouted "cow" at her. She told her husband to drive away. She believed they saw the attack against Shirley Banks. Okay, that's a pretty frightening scenario when you're just driving down the road in your car.
That whole description is just so disturbing.
It sounds like something you would see in a scary movie.
Yeah. Holding her with one hand while he punched her again and again.
And then he walks up to the car and calls this woman a cow. John Cannan was charged with the murder in December 1987. In February 1988, he was questioned for the first time about the disappearance of Suzy Lamplugh. At the time of Suzy's disappearance, he was on day release after serving 5 years of an 8-year sentence for rape.
Oh, yeah, I forgot they do that there, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, let you out for the day, then you go back at night and sleep there and get your meal.
Yeah, we've seen it in other countries. I'm not a huge fan of it. I got to be honest with you.
Me neither.
But I get it. Some people from other countries have written into me saying, well, how else are you going to integrate some of these people back into society? I understand it, but some of these people, it does give them the opportunity to commit crime. And it may be what happened here. Now, it doesn't mean that he wouldn't have done the exact same thing the minute he was released, but
is there ever a perfect scenario?
No. And there's no perfect system either. And I want to make that very clear. If there was a perfect system, everybody would just use the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why there's so many different types, right? Because there is no perfect system. The police suspected that Cannan briefly dated Suzy before she ended the relationship. The theory was that he killed her because she rejected him. Cannan resembled an e-fit of the man who was seen speaking to Suzy shortly before she went missing. Additionally, he was nicknamed Kipper in prison, and the police were looking for a suspect using the alias Mr. Kipper.
Well, I don't know about you, but known as Kipper and Mr. Kipper seem pretty close.
Yeah, I don't think you can get much closer than the exact same name with a Mr. in front of it. Now, Cannan denied any involvement. He also claimed that he had an alibi, which we'll discuss later in the episode. However, his former girlfriend, Gilly Page, told the police that while she was seeing Cannan, he confessed to Suzy's murder and hinted at burying a body. On April 3rd, 1988, Shirley Banks' nude body was found in a ditch in the Quantock Hills in Somerset. She was found in a place known as Dead Woman's Ditch by a woman who was looking for flowers with her family. I get it. You want to go out, look for some flowers. I think the last place I would go is a place called Dead Woman's Ditch.
Yeah, wouldn't be the ideal place to go with your family, I wouldn't think.
And who is naming these places?
I mean, I think if it's named Dead Woman's Ditch, maybe they already found a dead woman there before.
Well, then it would be an apt description, but it just seems like a strange name. Shirley's thumbprint was still intact, which is what led to her positive identification. An autopsy determined that she was bludgeoned to death. In April 1989, John Cannan received a life sentence for the rape and murder of Shirley Banks. He received 2 more life sentences for attempted kidnapping and 2 counts of abduction with intent to engage in unlawful sexual intercourse in different cases. He was ordered to serve a minimum term of 35 years. So obviously, this was a very bad guy. There's no 2 ways around that.
Yeah, this guy's a real monster.
But is he the monster who is responsible for what happened to Suzy? That's the question. In May 2000, the investigation was reopened and BBC Crime Watch made an appeal for information about a dark BMW that a jogger saw in Fulham at the time of Suzy's disappearance. In late May, the police revealed they made a significant discovery in the case. A witness came forward and said they loaned a car to one of the key suspects at the time Suzy disappeared. The vehicle was recovered from a used car dealership in North London. It had been parked there for several years. In June 2000, it was reported that the police spoke to a jogger who believed he saw Suzy struggling with a man in a parking lot near southwest London around lunchtime on the day of her disappearance. The jogger heard the car horn and saw a woman in distress. The jogger saw the car drive off towards Fulham Palace Road.
So now we have somebody that believes they saw her arguing on the day she went missing.
And this would be the second person, right? Because somebody saw her arguing with a man outside of the property. Now we have someone who believes they saw her arguing with a man in a parking lot. The police initially discounted his statement because it didn't fit their timeline. He described the woman as blonde, and pictures of Suzy show her with brown hair, but she did have it highlighted a week before she was abducted.
So there you go.
And
could have been.
I'm not great with hair colors. I'm going to be honest with you. You know, black hair, brown hair. Okay, the basics, gray hair, I got all that. But, you know, a lot of women have multi-colored hair. There's layers. Some are highlighted, some are not.
Low lights, highlights.
Sure.
Ombre.
You have frosted tips. I mean, everybody does things a little differently. But my wife has come home, you know, after getting her hair done. She naturally has darker hair.
Yeah.
But it can sometimes look blonde after she gets the highlights. So I understand that.
And what do you say to her when she comes home from getting her hair done?
The same thing. Looks great, honey. Sometimes I don't even notice a difference.
But you still say.
I still say the same thing.
That's exactly right.
In December 2000, the police searched land near the Norton Barracks in hopes of finding Suzy's body. Officers brought in search dogs, police divers, and forensic archaeologists. The police didn't think it was necessary to dig at the abandoned barracks because they were so well developed that Suzy would have been found during the construction process. On December 4th, 2000, John Cannan was arrested and questioned on suspicion of kidnapping and murdering Suzy, but he was not formally charged. A leaked video from 2000 shows him telling detectives, "I have committed crimes. I've done many things wrong in my life, things that, believe me, I'm genuinely sorry for, and 1 or 2 things I haven't been caught for."
1 or 2 things I haven't been caught for.
And if you ask me, most killers, if they were being honest, could say the same thing.
Absolutely.
And it probably wouldn't be 1 or 2. It would probably be more. In February 2001, the police once again searched the site close to the Norton Army Barracks. 2 months later, in April, the police searched Quantock Hills in Somerset. This is the area where victim Shirley Banks was found in 1988. But after a week of searching, the police found no new evidence. And to me, it is smart to search that area where Shirley Banks was found. We have often seen that, killers will dispose of multiple victims in essentially the same area.
Yeah, they like to revisit the same sites.
Yes. A police spokesman said he could not comment on reports that a local man came forward to report that a family member of his saw a man digging in this area around the time of Suzy's disappearance.
But if true, that's some important information.
It could be. I mean, at the time this woman goes missing, someone is digging in an area that people later say is the area where her body is buried. In June 2002, the Metropolitan Police sent a file to the Crown Prosecution Service asking prosecutors to charge John Cannan with murder. On October 17th, the CPS advised against bringing charges against Cannan. According to the West Somerset Free Press, his lawyer said he was absolutely devastated. He is particularly distressed at the inference that he could at least have the decency to tell the Lamplugh family where Suzy's body is buried. The lawyer continued, John Cannan is not playing mind games. He can't tell the Lamplugh family where their daughter is buried because he didn't kill her.
But in a lot of the research, I read that he does like to play mind games and has continued to play mind games.
As many killers do. And my theory around that is that they have so very little control over most aspects of their life once they get to prison, right? Prison is not a place where you have, most of the time, a great deal of freedom and control. You're told what to do, when to eat, when to sleep, a lot of things like that. So for, I think, some of these killers, the fact that they may know something that the authorities don't know gives them an element of control that they revel in. And so therefore, they enjoy playing little mind games with the police. What else do they have to do, Gibbs?
Nothing.
I also think it's one of the reasons why a lot of killers don't talk about some of the murders that the police don't know for sure they committed. Right? They're holding on to this thing that only they know for sure about. Maybe they think without that, they don't have anything. That's like the one thing they can control.
Yeah.
On November 5th, 2002, the police publicly named John Cannan as the only suspect in the case. His solicitor said that John had already been convicted by the media, and he was extremely upset about the way he was treated.
Was his feelings hurt?
Yeah. This murderer, kidnapper, prolific sexual predator cried himself to sleep because he didn't like the way he was being treated. But he continued to deny any involvement in Suzy's murder. He later appealed to have his minimum term reduced. During a 2006 hearing, a judge said, per the West Somerset Free Press, evidence suggests he was monitoring her, meaning Suzy, before she was abducted. He certainly knew the area. He would have sought out a woman like Suzy and may have contacted her and her estate agents beforehand. Cannan's appeal was dismissed at a 2009 hearing, where a judge concluded his human rights were not violated by the lengthy minimum term.
So he was concerned that his 35 years of his minimum life sentences was too much for him.
It was violating his human rights. But I want to go back to what this judge said. Evidence suggests that he was monitoring Suzy. Now, we don't know what that evidence is, but that's a strong statement.
It's a very strong statement.
And, given the fact that he had targeted female real estate agents in the past, I don't think it's leaping to conclusions to say that it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's his MO.
Mm-hmm.
Toss in the Kipper name, and this is the area that he tended to work in.
There's a lot of things going against him, or actually working for him as being involved, right? In May 2008, the police asked to see prosecution files after serial killer Steve Wright was convicted of killing 5 sex workers in Suffolk. Wright knew Suzy because they both worked on the QE2 cruise ship in the 1980s. The spokesman said, "This is not a strong line of inquiry," and the police ultimately determined Wright was not linked to Suzy's death. But you could see why they would want to look into him.
Oh, for sure.
Here's a serial killer who just happened to work with her on this cruise ship back in the 80s. Also makes me wonder how many serial killers are working on cruise ships. That's a little scary.
Maybe more than we realize.
I think there's more of a lot of things than we would like to come to actually know. In August 2010, officers announced they would excavate a field between Pershore and the village of Drake's Broughton, about 3 miles from the site of the former Norton Army Barracks. This Norton Army Barracks just keeps coming up time and time again.
Yeah, it seems to be the site.
Well, it was said by multiple people that this is where Suzy was buried. This search didn't yield any new results, despite the fact that a member of the public reported seeing disturbed earth in the area after Suzy disappeared. So, that could be something. It could be nothing, but we do have multiple sightings. Someone digging. Now, someone said they saw, a patch of disturbed earth, but yet none of these searches are finding anything. Yet we don't know how big this area is. It could be tough. Suzy's mother, Diana, died in August 2011. She passed away in her sleep after having a stroke, and she'd been suffering from Alzheimer's since 2003.
That's tough.
Yeah, it's a tough disease. You and I have talked about it before. We both had, our experiences with it with family members. But, you feel for people like Diana. She died never finding out for sure what happened to her daughter.
Yeah, never got to know.
In a 2016 interview with the BBC, Paul Lamplugh said, "I don't have very much hope that I will find out what happened." He added, "I miss Suzy more now. I think the older I get, the more I miss her. I particularly remember having a conversation when Diana was chiding her for doing too much. And she said, 'Come on, Mom, life is for living.' Suzy did know how to live life fully, but no one taught her how to be safe." So there's a couple of things here that I want to break down. Paul's giving this interview in 2016. His wife, passed away 5 years before that. I understand why he's saying, I'm probably not going to live to find out what happened to Suzy.
Yeah, it's been all this time, and we've yet to find out anything. Probably not going to find out anything either before I pass.
And then, this statement. Suzy knew how to live life fully, but no one taught her how to be safe. As a parent, we all teach our children whatever we can about being safe.
We try.
But can you teach them everything that would ensure that they could never be harmed? I mean, it's just not possible.
No, I don't think we can.
So, was she doing something that put her at risk? And I don't know that she was. It's one thing if, Gibbs, you go downtown to buy drugs in a rough neighborhood and something happens to you. You are putting yourself at risk.
Sure.
Number one, by doing something that you're not supposed to be doing. And number two, because you're in an area with a higher crime rate, let's say, as opposed to you go to the local supermarket and somebody's not paying attention and they run you over as you're trying to walk to the supermarket. But you weren't doing anything that was risky. You weren't putting yourself in a position of risk.
Right.
Just something bad happened to you.
Yeah. And that's why on both of those instances, I get my drugs and my food delivered to me.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Very smart. In October 2018, the police searched the former home of John Cannan's mother in Sutton Coldfield, a civil parish in the city of Birmingham. And the only reason I know Birmingham is because of my favorite show, Peaky Blinders.
No, you just can't wait for the movie to come out next year.
I can't. I'm actually going to rewatch the whole series. According to current owner Philip Carey, the police were interested in looking underneath the concrete where a garage once stood. The police had dismantled the structure. Carey also said officers performed searches at the property from the end of 2003 to the spring of 2004. And police faced criticism for the fact that the back garden was not excavated in 2003.
Well, they're probably like, hey, if you're going to put the effort in to do all this stuff, why wouldn't you went ahead and excavate that at the same time?
Yeah. But this thought that, someone is buried in concrete. Unfortunately, it turns out that it has happened many, many times, right? Over the years, we've covered cases where, people have put down a patio in their backyard, really for the sole purpose of hiding a body.
But it's good that they're still active. In 2003, 16 years or so after her disappearance.
Yeah, there's still work being done. They're following up on tips and leads. Now, they're also getting criticism for not doing certain things. But I think that's always going to happen when you don't solve the case. Criticism is going to come from somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Jim Dickey, a former Met Police Deputy Chief Inspector who led a review of the case between 2000 and 2006, told BBC, "I don't think we did an extensive search there. The reason for that was that we had no evidence or intelligence to lead us to believe that John Cannan may have secreted Suzy's body there, or indeed there was any other evidence which would assist with our review of the murder." Secreted. That's a term that you don't hear very often over here. Maybe it's more common in England.
On the other side of the pond?
Yeah. Dickey said they spoke to John Cannan's mother during the review, but did not carry out an extensive search of the site. Dickey also said there was no doubt that Cannan was in Fulham on the day Suzy went missing. In November 2018, the Metropolitan Police concluded their 2-week search of the Sutton Coldfield home with no new updates. So you mentioned, they're active in 2003, 2004. Well, now we've got activity, all the way up to 2018.
I think that's impressive, meaning they haven't given up.
Yeah, I find it very impressive. John Cannan once again denied his involvement. His lawyer said he hoped the search would end speculation. Well, I don't think it's going to. There are a number of things tying John to the disappearance of Suzy. I don't think there's anything definitive that you would say, without a reasonable doubt, he did it. But just because they don't find anything during this search, it's probably not going to end the speculation.
It's not like he's going to raise his hand and say, hey, stop searching. I did it. I'm the one.
And here's where she is.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not going to. Why? Because they would add something on? Maybe. But I still go back to the control, the power. Maybe that's a good word.
Toying.
Well, yeah, people feel like they have power over authority because they know something that the authorities don't know. And why would you want to give that up? In late 2018, it was reported that an official police review criticized how former lead investigator Detective Superintendent Malcolm Hackett was prejudiced by his belief that Diana Lamplugh was behind media stories linking John Cannan to Suzy's case. This review was written in 1987, but it wasn't released for many years. The review found that Hackett was prejudiced to such an extent that he failed to properly interview the suspect, put him in lineups, or even check his alibi. He even told his team to try to eliminate Cannan as a suspect. Cannan's name first came up as a suspect in June 1987. A detective was investigating a rape that he committed in October 1986 and spoke to Hackett about him, but the information was not given much credence and no further action was taken. The Lamplughs raised questions about Cannan after he was arrested in October 1987 for the murder of Shirley Banks. And why wouldn't they? Given everything that we've talked about, you could see why the family would raise questions about this guy.
Just seems logical.
The family previously had good rapport with investigators, but this all changed when Hackett took over the case. Hackett failed to interview Cannan while he was in custody. Cannan was not put in a lineup in front of witnesses who claimed they saw Mr. Kipper with Suzy on the day she disappeared.
This is a huge fail.
It absolutely. You know, we talked about the fact that he was called Kipper. Her book lists Mr. Kipper. Why would you not, at the very least, put together a lineup which includes Cannan and have this witness see if the person they saw is in this lineup?
Yeah, it's going to do one of two things, right? It's either going to confirm or exclude him.
Hackett also neglected to debrief Cannan's ex-girlfriend, Gilly Page, who claimed he confessed to the crime. Hackett also didn't check Cannan's alibi for the day of Suzy's abduction. Cannan claimed he was speaking to a sales assistant in Birmingham. She was approached over a year later and confirmed Cannan's account, but there were doubts about whether she had the correct date. And I'm telling you, Gibbs, you come and ask me about something that happened a year ago, I'm going to struggle with the facts.
Yeah, unless I have it in my day planner back then.
Or now, because you still carry one for some reason.
I like the way they make me feel.
It's tough, though.
Yeah.
Right? So much happens in a year. Heck, most of us can't remember certain things that happened a month ago, let alone a year ago. In March 1989, Hackett wrote, "There was no evidence that Cannan committed any offense against Suzy Lamplugh."
How can he say that?
Well, there's not going to be any evidence if you don't investigate.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, is he wrong in saying that? No. But he's saying it because any evidence they would have found would have required certain steps to be taken that were never taken.
Yeah, I really feel like he fell asleep on this one.
Well, obviously he's gotten a lot of criticism over the years, and I think for a lot of it, rightfully so. The report stated a more positive approach from the senior investigating officer regarding Cannan's status as a genuine suspect could have resolved whether he was responsible for Suzy's murder. And I think that just flat out tells you. Now, it's there's a little bit of euphemistic language there.
Sure. A
more positive approach. He could have said, you know, if we'd have gotten off our asses and done what we were supposed to do.
Right.
But let's be tactful and use the term a more positive approach. The report went on to say, unfortunately, the SIO appears to have been prejudiced against this course of action, primarily because he believed Cannan had come into the murder incident room as a suspect from Diana Lamplugh. Okay, what if he did? What does it matter where the thought that he's a suspect comes from?
Yeah, you should be open to any of those avenues.
The report stated this resulted in the SIO specifically stating that Cannan was not to be treated as a suspect. As a result, only limited actions were undertaken and a non-challenging interview strategy adopted. I mean, that's like me being in charge of the investigation and, you know, somebody comes in and says, yeah, I think it was that Gibby guy, but I don't like the person who told me that.
Right.
And solely based on that, I'm telling all the officers that are working the case for me, leave Gibby alone because I don't believe this person or I don't like this person. That makes no sense whatsoever.
No. I mean, I like that you do that for me, but it's ridiculous.
I would never do that. If anything, I would say double down your efforts and make some stuff up if you have to.
Yeah, make them crack.
If we have to plant evidence, that's what we have to do. In July 2019, additional searches were conducted in Pershore near the Drake's Broughton. However, the police found no evidence. So, they're doing a lot of searches throughout the year. They just haven't found any evidence. In September 2023, a parole board concluded that it would be unsafe to release John Cannan, who had served over 33 years. By that point, the board also refused to move him to a lower security facility.
That says a lot.
It does. Cannan continues to maintain his innocence and has not completed programs to address his offending behavior, according to the board.
Well, that's going to be another reason why they're probably not going to give him parole.
Yeah, in most places, maintaining your innocence is not what the parole board wants. But also, if you're not completing programs to address whatever behavior landed you in prison, well, I would think to the parole board, that would look like you're not trying.
Exactly.
We're not letting you out because you're not even trying in here.
You've had 33 years to complete these courses. You haven't completed one.
Cannan is currently 69 years old and is reportedly receiving end-of-life care. So, it does sound as though he's not well. He most likely will die while he's incarcerated.
Yeah.
As we wrap this one up, over 3 decades later, Suzy Lamplugh has still not been found. Based on his history of violent crimes, the police still believe John Cannan is their main suspect, although he's never been formally charged. They also believe he may be connected to other unsolved crimes in the 70s and 80s. And I think all of that is potentially true.
Yeah.
I'm sure this guy has other unsolved crimes that he's connected to. There is a lot of smoke when it comes to him possibly being involved in whatever happened to Suzy. You'd have to say that. And we've detailed out all of those things. It is a shame that, kind of this officer in charge specifically instructed people to steer away from Cannan back in the day.
Right.
Because you just think about, the one person who is kind of his alibi. Well, if she would have been interviewed within days or weeks, her story might have been different.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm not even saying she's lying. I'm just saying because she wasn't interviewed until a year later, she might have gotten her dates mixed up.
And if they would have questioned his girlfriend at the time and dove into why she said what she did about what he told her.
About confessing and burying a body. And it's hard not to believe, based on everything we know, that I think more than likely it was him. But I don't know, because of everything that was done or not done, if they will ever be able to convict him. And it sounds like he's, nearing the end of his life. So I don't know what's going to happen.
And I really doubt he'll admit to it.
Yeah, you mean like have a deathbed confession type moment? He doesn't seem like the type of guy.
No, because he still hasn't admitted to why he's in prison.
Yeah, for the ones he was actually convicted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's tragic, but, him being called the house for sale rapist, targeting female real estate agents. Suzy was a real estate agent. There's just a lot there. And I think that's why the police believe that he is the main suspect. I just don't know that they'll ever be able to put the evidence together needed to charge and convict him.
Right.
But that's it for our episode on Suzy Lamplugh. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hi, guys. It's Mishi calling from the center of Canada again. Must move, dude. I was just going to say I'm finished listening to the Kenesha Unsolved Mystery, and I had to call in because I have a girlfriend even still to this day, if we even go to like a chain restaurant, if we turn our heads and she's got a plan, she will be out of there and you have no idea where she is. Back when we were younger and we went to the bar, it was commonplace that we left with her stuff because she would poof and disappear for a couple days. So I don't think it's that hard to believe that somebody wanders off while partying. Anyways, keep your head on a swivel and keep your own time ticking. And you guys are great. I'm still Gibbs. Love you. Bye.
All right. Thank you so much for the voicemail. Gibbs, you ever have anybody who just kind of poofed on you?
I haven't, but there's been times I wish somebody would poof on me.
Just disappear?
I know you feel the same way.
Oh, there's been a lot of people who I wish would disappear. Sounds ominous.
Yeah.
But leave my line of sight, leave me alone.
Why are you looking at me so weird?
Oh, it's just, just thinking about who that might be.
You're really eyeing me.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Carla. I've been a longtime listener of your podcast, and I really like your show, and I like the Unsolved one, too. I just listened to the Lacey episode where you mentioned that the suspect, Robbie Knight's brother, Christopher, is the man who played Peter Brady on the Brady Bunch. That is, in fact, not true. Christopher Knight, that played that character on the Brady Bunch, is actually still alive as of today, October 7th. Anyway, I'm sure you're going to receive plenty of emails about this and voicemails, but I've never called in before, and I just wanted to do that. I'm Team TCAT. Love you both. And thank you for putting out the content. Keep your own time ticking. Love you guys. Bye.
All right. Love you too. So glad you called in. So Gibbs, I'm starting to think that maybe my attempt at humor is too dry because I obviously was not trying to say that this man's brother played Peter Brady. His name just happened to be Christopher Knight. Yeah. And so I called him, as playing Peter Brady. But yeah, see, it's too dry. Some people are taking it as though I'm being serious.
It was so dry. It reminded me of the time Peter tried to sing on the Brady Bunch. And he had that, that hoarse.
Is that where his voice cracked really badly?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's how dry.
I used to love the Brady Bunch. And it's hard to believe because I felt like I watched it so much that it really wasn't on very long.
It really wasn't. But they did have like these specials.
And they had some spinoffs and I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of, it was Gilligan's Island that was on for a very, very short time, like 2-3 seasons.
Yeah.
Maybe the Brady Bunch was on longer than what I think.
Yeah, I know you are a big Mary Ann fan. We all know that.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. If we're debating Ginger and Mary Ann, it's no question. Mary Ann.
The fact that you make me wear plaid in here sometimes, I don't even know what to say.
With pigtails?
I didn't want to say that out loud.
Oh my gosh! All right, buddy, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Pluto TV is a place for movie fans, like me.
And TV fans, like me.
They've got something for everyone, and it's free.
I love free, and I love Jersey Shore.
For me, it's The Godfather.
SpongeBob SquarePants, I am Patrick. Patrick is me.
Oh, Forrest Gump, come on.
Criminal Minds, solving crime after bedtime.
Whatever you love to watch, Pluto TV makes it easy with thousands of free movies and shows.
Pluto TV, stream now, pay never.